Thank you very much, Excellencies. We're honored to have you here, Your Excellency, on stage. You have a pulse of many things across the UAE economy, whether it's through your role at ADQ or and the Ministry of Investment. I think one thing that the audience here surely will want to hear about, which is the obvious question in this conference, is why should we invest in the UAE? Can we maybe perhaps start with that opening question?
Well, start with the hard one, Said. First of all, Abdullah, you promised me a fire. So, it was fireside chat. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's a pleasure to be here. Why invest in the UAE? The list is really long, but if I break it down into the fundamentals. First of all, what is any investor looking for? Most important, security and good law of the land. I think any country that is unable to deliver security, is unable to deliver a court system or a legislative system or a law system that doesn't enable you to protect your investment, to conduct business is meaningless. And so fundamentals there in terms of security and legislation and law. The second thing any investor is looking for is opportunities. So country is good. When I look at opportunity, what do I look for? I say, is this a thriving economy with a good financial standing? The answer to those questions is yes. Whatever rating you look at, it's at least an A minus in terms of credit rating. In terms of growth numbers, you're looking at high single digit. Depending on the sector, could be double digit. So there's economic growth there. They're looking at, is there trade in terms of, can I put my money in and can I get my money out? And so if you look at just number of transactions that have happened in the UAE over the last 5-10 years, you see more activity in terms of number of investments that are exchanging hands between either private equity or families or governments or so on. So I can get in and out of that business. I think the UAE has demonstrated that you can enter a business and sell that business. Then I ask, okay, well, good financials, are there opportunities? And where do they lie? And I think that's where, for me, is the most exciting opportunity within the UAE today is over the last 50 years, with the creation of the UAE, you've started to see certain family wealth that is getting to a level of maturity, or entrepreneurs who've gotten to a level of maturity where they're looking for the next phase of growth for their businesses. Some of those are looking for capital to grow. Some of them are looking for transition, whether it's from a family to the next generation or to a new investor. And then you're also seeing the government monetize and privatize its businesses. And so we've seen more public-private partnerships in the last decade than we have in the previous 4. We're seeing more public offerings in terms of in the stock market. We're seeing, governments moving out of non-strategic security sectors. And so when I look at the opportunity and I say, does that opportunity exist in a stable market? The answer is yes. Now, I have a law, I have the opportunity. The question then becomes, well, can I do business in this country? Is it a place where I can have my people? Is it a place where I can live? Is it a place that I think is secure? Again, you look at all the infrastructure requirements, whether it's airports, whether it's ports, whether it's transport, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's entertainment, you name it, it's there, right? Are we the best in the world yet? No, but we will be soon. We're definitely up there. When you look at number of attractions that you can go and spend the weekend doing, or if it's about types of education, whether you're looking for a Japanese school or you're looking for a Swiss-based school or French school or whatever the preferred education system you're looking for, higher, lower, it's all available. So between these 3 pillars, I think you have everything you need within the UAE. What wouldn't make you come to it? The only thing that I can think of today that I would say we need to do more on is there's probably a couple of sectors where we need to enhance some of those opportunities, make it clear to investors. They're not really clear today. And that's, I think, an area of focus for us going forward, is actually showing investors certain sectors and their potential.
Fantastic. And just picking up on the last point that you spoke about, you've obviously spoken about education, ports, monetization by founders and entrepreneurs, but are there sectors specifically under your leadership in the ministry that you're trying to encourage more investment into?
Well, absolutely. I think the unique situation of the UAE today is, I mean, we're one of a kind, especially in our part of the world. First of all, you have individual emirates, which one of the things we pride ourselves on is they compete. And some see that as a bad thing, some see that as a good thing. We see it as a good thing. It's something we embrace. It's something we're excited about. You have each of these emirates with their individual strategies, their individual priorities, and they're competing in those spaces, whether that's a competition between Sharjah and Dubai, or Ajman and Sharjah, or Abu Dhabi and Sharjah. Everyone is competing. And each one is putting out priority sectors for them, and they're putting specific incentives. And so, is there one sector that we all align on? Probably yes, there are a couple of sectors that all of us are aligned on, which is everyone wants to do real estate, everyone wants to do tourism. But more importantly, I think what you're seeing is a shift away from the services into the industries. And so a common theme, which we've tried to address in our national investment plan, is to look at priority sectors that the UAE is going to focus on, which are common across the Emirates. And so as a Minister of Investment, our job is not to try and take away from those independents and put a strategy that is ignorant to every Emirate's needs, but try and find a cohesive interest across the UAE. So what are those? I think we are still far behind where we would like to be on financial services. For me, there's definitely significant room to grow there, whether it's in the asset management business, whether it's in the insurance business, whether it's even in the banking, and whether it's the technology or fintech or so on. So I think financial services is a space that I think has a huge amount of growth and potential. And I go back to our fundamentals. What do you want when you're looking at financial services? You want security. You want to make sure that's safe in a regulated environment. And also you want to make sure that it's a healthy environment financially. It's not going to, the central bank isn't going to go bust. So financial services definitely on the top of our list. The second space I would say that we can't ignore, which I think we're heavily pushing for, is on the pharmaceuticals and the drug discovery and biosciences and medical devices. Again, I think the UAE has cut a significant path into innovation and spending a lot of time, whether it's on genome sequencing, whether it's on organizing data around the single file of patients, whether it's creating centers for research and development, all of which will lead to more discovery around drugs and specific to our part of the world. And the uniqueness there is you go anywhere in the world and the population ratio is typically, at least 50% national, maybe even higher. I'm giving 50% of just credit that there's someone out there who has a 50% ratio of nationals to expat, and then a 50% expat ratio or a non-national ratio. Here, you have a 10% ratio to 90. And so I think of it as a petri dish. You basically have a sample, not to say that you're all samples within the country, but that is if you think of the genome sequencing of the UAE, it's a 200+ nationality genome sequence. And it's already sorry I'm divesting here, but it's already at 900,000, close to 1 million. It's the biggest biobank out there. What will that lead to in terms of discoveries? So definitely, I would say pharmaceutical, biosciences, in the healthcare space is going to be a big growth area. I think the third, which really the Ministry of Industry and Technology has really been pushing, is I think the opportunity for manufacturing is a growing space. And I don't think we can underestimate the access to talent and access to technology, ability to adapt the latest technologies when we think about robotics and the support around that. Again, I think it's going to be a big opportunity for us. There are other sectors which, of course, are needless to say. I don't want to divulge because I think we've already spoken so much about it, which is AI and technology associated to AI, whether it's data centers or so forth. And then, of course, energy in general. We continue to be a big investor in renewables, a big investor in conventional. So I think these opportunities continue to exist. But those five, to me, would constitute 90% of the biggest opportunity out there.
I mean, that gives hopefully a lot of people a lot of food for thought and ideas to pursue. Now, with a lot of these agendas, obviously, Your Excellency, capital is at the heart of being a catalyst to grow industry, to grow asset managers, to grow AI technology as well. So you cut across greenfield to venture to more mature businesses. What are the policies that have been adopted, initiatives that have been launched that helps unlock that capital to do these projects in the UAE?
Well, I think the layers of capital are, not just simply availability of private capital, but also thinking about enhancing our capital markets, enhancing our regulation around banking and ability to lend, thinking of, non-financial institutions, thinking about, how pensions play roles, but also how, charities play roles and foundations. So I first would start that the UAE has gotten to a point in the region where between the two financial districts, DIFC and ADGM, we've gotten to a point which I think we're competing amongst the best. We're still competing amongst some of the top players, but I think the regulations and the whole ecosystem that's been created there, I think is a great foundation to start to build off. On the back of that, I think where we need to go to next is really continue to break the tie between what is believed to be offshore and onshore and some of the regulation. And while I, as a minister, I'm not really involved in the regulation side, we work very closely with the Ministry of Economy, with the Ministry of Finance, to help enhance a lot of the laws and regulation between the onshore and the offshore. And I think the amount of progress and change that's already happened in our regulations and policies is significant. The amount of regulation and change that's happened in human capital, ability to get people in and out of the country smoothly and easily, a huge transformation, which again, I would say you can't ignore. The ease of getting your business set up, which again, both the onshore and offshoring, the processes that are required, the documentations, there's a whole swathe of opportunities that are going to be put out there, and there's already some that started, whether it's some of the visas or some of the investment promotion programs that are out there. But more importantly, I think one of the biggest opportunities that I think we need to exhaust and focus on, you have your financial districts and the regulation around them. You have the ease of doing business and the simplicity around that, and the constant change of laws that are taking place. But I think even more important is we need to continue to attract investors to see this as a secure place for them to host their capital and manage their capital from. And so a lot of our time is spent talking to people, educating them about what we have, and a lot of people are surprised when they read up. Not to say people are ignorant, but I think that there's a point where, you assume it's okay, you assume it's good, but actually if you spend just a day with a lawyer or a day with the ADGM or with DIFC and actually give them a chance to explain what is out there, you start to see that it's quite unique what the offering is. And so I think we have quite a solid foundation. We need to continue to communicate, over-communicate. That's why I'm here today. And tell people, spend an hour, half an hour with the regulators, with the different players, just to let you know what's actually happening on the ground and why this is a better place than being elsewhere in the world.
Moving on to perhaps maybe a trickier question, but definitely comes on the minds of a lot of investors, is we sit in the UAE, in a region neighboring a number of large economies that are also equally initiating incentives to attract investment, economic growth incentives, creating opportunities for investments. How does the UAE continue creating a competitive edge for itself amongst this competition? And how does it position itself?
Well, not to sound like a broken record, but I do have to emphasize that we are the only country in at least a 5-hour, if not more, time zone that has the unique selling point of 7 different Emirates competing for investors. There is not one institution. Plus a federal government on top of that, so call it 8, all competing and pitching why this is a better place. So just in terms of competition, I'm not sure who we're competing with. If that's 8 versus who, that in itself is an edge. But putting that aside, let's assume that everyone else is doing the same. I think the level of engagement of every single person in the government is, for me, unheard of. One of the things I find even challenging for me as a Minister of Investment, everyone in the government is talking economy. Everyone is talking business. Whether it's the healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's the foreign affairs, whether it's our ambassadors, everyone is out there saying the same consistent message, that we are an economy open for business, we are an economy open to having more and more people come in and set up shop here. And so I'm trying to compete even with colleagues, which is not even their responsibility. And so I think that's another unique selling point. The third thing I would mention is just the continuous drive from our leadership. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed sets the precedent. This is a man who doesn't stop in terms of aspiration of where we want to be. Their Highnesses all have a common goal, which is we need to be better tomorrow, we need to be better today, we need to be better right now. And so we're constantly looking at how we change our laws. We're constantly revisiting, even if a law just got issued yesterday and we made a mistake, we think about how we're going to change that. And I think that continuous change, that continuous innovation, the engagement of everyone in this space, the competition, these 3 factors to me put us way ahead of any other competitor. Absolutely critical to have incentives, critical to have the ecosystem, the infrastructure, but I would rather be in a market that is engaging with me, solving my problems. We call this Investopia, and it's an interesting name choice because I've been in almost any meeting you can think of, and the consistent message our leadership deliver to every investor that comes to town is tell us what your Investopia looks like. Tell us what it looks like and we'll make it happen. We'll go to the nth degree to try and make that change. And I think that's something that you won't find anywhere else.
Perhaps moving on maybe to the last point you spoke about, where you're continuously looking at how can we make this place a better place for investors, how do we change rules and regulations to enhance foreign direct investment. What are the policies or initiatives that you expect to come in the foreseeable future that could act as a further catalyst to spurring economic growth and attracting investment?
I think the first most important in my mind is data. One of the biggest, I think, obstacles to investors today that we have to unlock and spend time on. We try and do it as much as we can, but I think a repository of information available and consistency in terms of delivering data to our investors is important. And that's one of the things we're trying to address. We're working with the Ministry of Economy and Finance and everyone involved to try and make sure that we can put out the latest data so that people can actually get a pulse of what's happening in our market. And I think that's, for me, the number one priority for us today. I think the company's law is an area which still has a couple of areas that need improvement, and that's something we're working on. Simple things that come from a bit of legacy that we need to continuously change. So companies law, some reform around that, I think still needs to enhance. And then I think the third thing is, we still have some challenges. I'm not going to but it is for us just pushing that last 5% or 1% of being better is, how can we make life for an investor even easier, that even if he's not in the UAE, how can I make his life that much easier to just set up shop without even having to flinch. I mean, just how simple can I make it, and how can I remove any bureaucracy left there? So these are, for me, the top three that I think of. There are many more. There's a lot of things that we can do around, end of service benefits, pensions, other things that I think are critical, all of which are being worked on. But those are the three that I would prioritize.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think with everything you've said, I'm sure the audience has enough to digest and think about. And as you said, the teams are available to engage.
Absolutely.
Whenever needed. Any closing remarks, Your Excellency, that you want to leave the audience with?
I'd love to ask you a question.
Fantastic. This is the awkward moment.
Yeah. I mean, Saeed, you're fortunate. I've worked with you now for at least the last 10 plus years. You working in one of the most prestigious investment banks out there. ADQ's had the privilege of working with Rothschild since inception. And, you've mainly advised on opportunities outside the UAE to the sovereign funds. What do you think is happening, or what are you seeing, negative or positive? Be frank and be honest. Do you see it improving in terms of the inbound to the investment bank about opportunities in the UAE? And be as negative as you want. I want to cut the BS.
So the way I will give maybe the audience, Your Excellency, a few anecdotal perspectives. And this applies to us and other investment banks as well, equally. We used to be a 10-person team covering the region in 2019. We are now 65 people. Our P&L has grown more than 7 times. Not just from ADQ.
So you're making a lot of money.
Not just from ADQ. And I think the interesting thing that we see in the market is a diversification of the client base that we work with, which is a reflection of the economy that we operate in. So sovereign funds have been the catalyst initially, for sure. The privatizations have been the catalyst. But what we see now is the momentum, I guess, thanks to the policies that the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Investment have done and the sovereign wealth funds have initiated. There are global private equity firms knocking on the doors, asking us to look at opportunities locally in the UAE. And that's global names, and maybe some of them are here, but like Blackstone, EQT. So these are blue chip names that we have never seen really invest in depth in this market, are starting to realize the opportunity and potentially what they're missing out. A lot of those institutions used to raise capital, right, from our sovereign funds and invest them elsewhere. But there you see now a reversal of some of that coming back to the region. Oak Tree Capital doing mezz financing to help hotel owners refurbish their hotels. So the sophistication of the market in the UAE is, I would say, extremely positive. And I have to say, maybe one of the, it's not a negative, but it's probably one of the things that we saw initially is sovereign funds were playing a very big role, and we thought they may overcrowd other people. But the reality is, what's happened now is they've actually made people realize that there is opportunity. And so you do see that level of activity, investment activity, picking up. You see, sorry, yeah,
No.
you're about to say something?
I was going to say, it's a common misconception,
Right.
This whole notion of the sovereign funds are crowding out. I think the sovereign funds, are eager to try and make sure that we're developing, but as they see the private sector kind of enter, they start to withdraw. And I think Dubai have really excelled in this in the last decade, in allowing more and more private sector investors.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that is a quick snapshot, and even the capital market space initially was privatizations of government assets, and now you see a long queue of private investors. Talabat came to IPO. Dubizzle is on the way. You have a number of, obviously, institutions, Alpha Data in Abu Dhabi, and a number of other ones that are now queuing up to come to the market. So I would say the policies are taking effect. And I think as investment bankers or people acting in the financial sector would say, please continue. Continue supporting the economy in the way they've done and with the policies that the ministries are implementing.
Thank you for joining us today, Said.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you very much.